Today we are going to discuss about the topic dural fold. At first, what do you mean by this dura? So we know that dura is a membrane. It is one of the thickest and toughest membrane which is covering the brain. Now dura is the outermost membrane which is covering the brain. So what is dura? It is the thickest and toughest outermost membrane which is covering the brain. Now the dura has got two layers. The cranial dura has got two layers, that is the outer endosteal layer and an inner meningeal layer. So what is this outer endosteal layer of the dura? Some points about the outer endosteal layer. So this outer endosteal layer of the dura, it is actually forming the inner periosteum of the skull bones. It forms the inner periosteum of skull bones. So it is also known as endocranium of skull bones. Now, other points about the outer endosteal layer. Now, this outer endosteal layer, it is continuous with the outer periosteum of the skull bones. Through the sutures and foramina. And it is also continuous with the periosteum of the orbit. Okay, periosteum of the orbit through the superior orbital fissure. And another point regarding the outer endosteal layer is that it is forming the sheath of some cranial nerves. Sheath of cranial nerves are also formed by the outer endosteal layer. That is, for example, it is forming the sheath of the optic nerve also, and this sheath becomes continuous with the sclera. So that is about the dura. It is the outermost membrane which is covering the brain, and it is the thickest and toughest membrane which is covering the brain. It consists of an outer endosteal layer and an inner meningeal layer. The outer endosteal layer, it is forming the inner periosteum of the skull bones, that is the endocranium of the skull bones, and it is continuous with the outer periosteum of the skull bones through the sutures and foramina. It is also continuous with the periosteum of the outer periosteum of the orbit through the superior orbital fissure, and it is forming the sheath of some cranial nerves. Now we are going to discuss in detail about the meningeal layer of the dura. So what are the points about the meningeal layer of the dura? So it is actually the inner layer of the dura, and this layer is continuous with the spinal dura. It is continuous with the spinal dura. And this meningeal layer also gets folded upon itself, and thereby it forms dural folds. So these dural folds are actually dividing the cranial cavity into so many compartments. So the question here is, an important question here is, the dural folds are formed by which layer of dura? Dural folds are formed by the meningeal layer or the inner meningeal layer of the dura. That is the answer. So dural fold is a modification of the meningeal layer of the dura. Besides this, the meningeal layer also has some dural sinuses in it. The two dural sinuses which are located inside the meningeal layer of the dura are: one is the inferior sagittal sinus and another one is the straight sinus. These are the two dural sinuses which are present in the meningeal layer of the dura. Okay. So far we have discussed about the two layers of the dura. Now we know that the dural fold is being formed by the meningeal layer of the dura. We have seen the sinuses which are present in the meningeal layer of the dura. Now we will be seeing in detail about the dural fold. Our topic proper is the dural folds. Okay. So how many dural folds are there? So what is this dural fold? It is actually a fold which is formed by the meningeal layer of the dura, which is nothing but the inner layer of the cranial dura, formed by meningeal layer. It is very important. Meningeal layer of the dura is forming the dural fold. So how many dural folds are there? The important ones I'm going to mention here. So first one we are going to discuss about is the Tentorium cerebellae. And the second one is the false cerebrae. And the third one is the false cerebellae. And the fourth one is the diaphragmacellae. So these are the four dural folds which is formed by the meningeal layer of the dura. So we are going to discuss about each of them separately. So first we are going to discuss about the Tentorium cerebellae. Look at the name. So what is the shape of this dural fold? Shape is tent shape. What is the importance? First importance is that it is forming the roof of posterior cranial fossa. Roof of posterior cranial fossa. And it is dividing the cranial cavity into supratentorial and infratentorial compartments. Supratentorial and infratentorial compartments. Okay. And it is separates occipital lobe of the cerebrum from cerebellum. So these are the three important features of the Tentorium cerebellae. Now we are going to discuss about the attachment of this Tentorium cerebellae and the parts of the Tentorium cerebellae, which is very important. So we are going to see the attachment here. So to know about this in detail, we have to know one point, that is it consists of an attached part and also a free part here. Free part means it is not attached. So we are going to draw this. So we will see the free part. For that, I'm drawing an important bony structure here. So what is this? This is the anterior clinoid process. And this is the posterior clinoid process. Now I am going to draw the free part of the Tentorium cerebellae. So the free part or anterior part, which is U-shaped, okay? It is U-shaped. And you can see the ends of the U is attached to the anterior clinoid process here. It is U-shaped and the ends of the U is being attached to the anterior clinoid process here. So this part which I have drawn in blue color, this is the anterior free part of the Tentorium cerebellae. Now the Tentorium cerebellae also has got a attached part. Now the attached part, it is attached to some structures here. So posterolaterally, it is being attached to transverse sulcus. Okay. So posterolaterally, it is attached to transverse sulcus on the occipital bone. And also on the posterior inferior angle of the parietal bone. Now anterolaterally, it is being attached to the superior part of the petrous temporal bone. So this is the anterolateral attachment. So anterolaterally, it is attached to the superior part of the petrous temporal bone. And also to the posterior clinoid process. It is also attached to posterior clinoid process. Okay. So this is the anterior free part which is U-shaped and the ends of the U is being attached to the anterior clinoid process. Now we have the attached part. It consists of a posterolateral part which is attached to the transverse sulcus on the occipital bone and to some part of the parietal bone. Anterolaterally, it is being attached to the superior part of the petrous temporal bone and to the posterior clinoid process. So that is about the two parts of the Tentorium cerebellae. Now we can see that the Tentorium cerebellae has got a superior surface here, and inferiorly it has got an inferior surface. Now on the superior surface here, that is on the median plane, it has got the attachment of the false cerebrae here. The false cerebrae is attached in the median plane on the superior surface of the Tentorium cerebellae here. And along the line of attachment of the false cerebrae on the superior surface of the tentorium cerebellar, we have a sinus here. So this sinus is called the straight sinus. Okay, the straight sinus is located on the superior surface of the tentorium cerebellar along the line of attachment of the false cerebrae on the superior surface of the tentorium cerebellar. Okay, which are the okay, I'll deal with that question. Now, what are the sinuses which are present in relation to the tentorium cerebellar? That is an important question. Sinuses present in relation to tentorium cerebellar. To tentorium cerebellar. We will once again see the tentorium cerebellar here. So we have got the free anterior part and we have got the attached part here. We will see the sinuses here. So most of the sinuses are related to the attached part of the tentorium cerebellar. So along its line of attachment to the petrous temporal bone, we have one sinus here. This is along the line of attachment to the superior part of the petrous temporal bone. So this sinus is the superior petrosal sinus. Superior petrosal sinus. Now along the line of attachment to the transverse sulcus on the occipital bone, we have two sinuses located on either side in relation to the tentorium cerebellar. So these two sinuses which are located on either side, which is related to the attached margin of the tentorium cerebellar, is the transverse sinus. Now we have learned that on the superior surface of the tentorium cerebellar, there is in the median plane there is attachment of the false cerebrae. Okay, and along the line of attachment of the false cerebrae to the tentorium cerebellar on the superior surface, we have one sinus here. That is the straight sinus. Okay. Here comes the answer to the question, which are the sinuses which are related to the tentorium cerebellar. Three sinuses are related to the tentorium cerebellar. They are the straight sinus, the superior petrosal sinus, and transverse sinus. This is an important question. Okay, three sinuses related to the tentorium cerebellar. Now, name one structure which is related to the tentorium cerebellar. An important structure. We have the trigeminal or Meckel's cave. Meckel's cave, which is related to the tentorium cerebellar. This is related to the tentorium cerebellar. So, what is this trigeminal or Meckel's cave? It is actually a recess of the dura mater. So, and this is related to the attached margin of the tentorium cerebellar. Related to the attached margin. And this is formed by the invagination of inferior layer of tentorium cerebellar. So this is another important point. So that is all about the tentorium cerebellar. These are the important points. Now we will discuss the second dural fold, that is the false cerebrae. So this is another dural fold. And what is the shape of this dural fold? It is sickle shaped. And what is the importance? Importance is that it is a dural fold which is separating two cerebral hemispheres. Two cerebral hemispheres. Okay. So what is the attachment of this false cerebrae? We will see that now. For that I have to first draw the Tentari Circle here. Clear. So you can see this is a Tentorium cerebellar and it has got a superior surface here. Okay, this is the superior surface and you can see the median plane of the superior surface of the Tentorium cerebellar here. Now the false cerebri is attached to the superior surface of the Tentorium cerebellar in the median plane here. It goes like this. It is attached to the superior surface of the Tentorium cerebellar in the median plane. And the anterior end is quite narrow. It is sickle shaped also. So this dural fold is known as the false cerebri. Okay. Can you see the anterior end? This is the anterior end. It is narrow and it is attached to a structure which is known as the crista galli. And the posterior end, you can see it is attached to the superior surface of the Tentorium cerebellar. And the important question, which are the dural venous sinuses related to the false cerebri? Dural sinuses related to the false cerebri. So before that, you have to see the superior attachment of the false cerebri. So this is a superior attachment. Superiorly, it is attached to the lips of the sagittal sulcus. Lips of the sagittal sulcus. Now we can see the lower margin. It is concave and it is free. Now we will see the sinuses which are related to the dural venous sinuses related to the false cerebri. Along the superior border, you can see a sinus which is related. So this sinus is the superior sagittal sinus. Now along the inferior border, we can see another dural venous sinus. So this is the inferior sagittal sinus. Now along the line of attachment of the false cerebri to the superior surface of the Tentari Cerebellar, we have another sinus here. This is the straight sinus. So here is the answer to the question, which are the dural venous sinuses related to the false cerebri. These are three. That is the superior sagittal sinus, the inferior sagittal sinus and the straight sinus. Okay, and besides this, the false cerebri has false cerebrae has two surfaces. It has got right and left surfaces which are related to the corresponding medial surface of the corresponding cerebral hemispheres. Okay. Now our next dural fold is false cerebellae. So I will draw the attachment of the false cerebellae first. Before that, I have to draw the tentorium cerebellae here. Now the false cerebellar, it is attached to the inferior surface of the tentorium cerebellae. So we know that the false cerebellae was attached to the superior surface of the tentorium cerebellae in the median plane. So like this, the false cerebellae is attached to the tentorium cerebellae but on the inferior surface. Okay. So it goes downwards and its anterior end, it is splitting into two and it is lodged on either side of the foramen magnum. So this is the foramen magnum. So this much part. So this is the false cerebellae. And the important point is that it is occupying posterior cerebellar notch. It is lying in the posterior cerebellar notch. So what about the shape? It is also sickle shape. And it is projecting into the posterior cerebellar notch. We can see the base of the sickle is being attached to the posterior part of the inferior surface of the tentorium cerebellar in the median plane. And the apex of the sickle, this is the apex of the sickle, it is lodged on, it divides into two parts and it is lodged on either side of the foramen magnum. Now we can see the posterior margin of this false cerebellae, it is convex, and this posterior margin, it is being attached to a bony structure, that is the internal occipital crust. Now it is enclosing what a sinus which is known as the occipital sinus. You can see the anterior margin here, it is concave and it is free also. Now the important question here, the dural sinus, question is the dural sinus related to the false cerebellae. There is one dural venous sinus which is related to the false cerebellae, that is the occipital sinus, which is located here. That is the occipital sinus. Now the last dural fold is the diaphragma cell. So what is the shape? It is small, circular, horizontal. Okay. What is the importance of diaphragma cell? Importance is that it is forming the roof of the hypophyseal fossa or pituitary fossa. Hypophyseal fossa. So the roof of hypophyseal fossa or pituitary fossa is being formed by the dural fold, that is the diaphragma cell. Now, what is the attachment? For that, two landmarks here. So that is the tuberculum cellae anteriorly, posteriorly another bony part here, that is the dorsum cellae. Okay, we can see the attachment of the diaphragm cellae. Anteriorly it is attached to the tuberculum cellae and posteriorly it is attached to the dorsum cellae, and laterally it is, this is the diaphragm cellae, and laterally it is continuous with the dura mater of the middle cranial fossa. Laterally continues with the dura of the middle cranial fossa. So that is about the attachment of the diaphragm cellae. So, and besides this, it has got a central aperture, and through this central aperture we can see one structure. So through this central aperture we are able to see the stalk of the hypophysis cerebri. The stalk of the hypophysis cerebri is passing through the central aperture in the diaphragm cellae. So, important points about the diaphragm cellae is that it is small, circular and horizontal in shape. It is forming the roof of the hypophyseal fossa or the pituitary fossa, attached to the tuberculum cellae anteriorly and dorsal cellae posteriorly, and laterally continues with the dura mater of the middle cranial fossa. And it has a central aperture through which the stalk of the hypophysis cerebri is passing. Now we will be seeing some pictures. Yeah. So you can see there's some dural folds here. First dural fold which you are going to see is the Tentori Cerebellar. You can see on either side, this is a Tentori Cerebellar. So this is the anterior free margin which is U-shaped, okay? And this is the attached margin. You can see the attached margin here. Can you see the dural sinuses which are related to the attached margin? That is, this is the transverse sinus. Here also you can see the transverse sinus which is related to the attached margin of the Tentari Cerebellar. Can you see the straight sinus? The straight sinus is located on the superior surface along the line of attachment of the false cerebri. So this is the straight sinus. Sorry, this is the transverse sinus, and along here we can see anterolaterally you can see the superior petrosal sinus which is related to the attached margin of the Tentari Cerebellar. Superior petrosal sinus. Can see the superior petrosal sinus. So this much is the superior petrosal sinus. So the three sinuses which are related to the Tentari Cerebellar are the straight sinus, the transverse sinus, and also the superior petrosal sinus. Now in this picture you can see the false cerebri also. This is the false cerebri. So that is sickle shaped, and the sinuses which are related to the false cerebri, this one, that is this one is the superior sagittal sinus, and this one is the inferior sagittal sinus, and along the line of attachment to the Tentari Cerebellar you can see the straight sinus. So which are the three sinuses related to the false cerebri? It is a superior sagittal sinus, inferior sagittal sinus, and a straight sinus. Another picture. In this we are able to see the free margin and attached margin of the Tentari Cerebellar. So this is the U-shaped part. This is the free margin or the anterior part of the Tentari Cerebellar. It is attached to the ends of the U is being attached to the anterior clinoid process on either side. Okay, so this is the attached part. The attached part goes like this. is attached on either side to the transverse sulcus on the occipital bone, and it is attached to the superior part of the petrous temporal bone like this, and also to the posterior glenoid process. So at the point of intersection of the attached part and the free part, there is a triangular area and two nerves which are related to this triangular area, that is the third and fourth cranial nerves, that is the oculomotor and the trochlea, are the two cranial nerves which are related to the point of intersection of the attached and free part of the tentorium cerebellae. Now we can see the sinuses which are related here along the line of attachment to the transverse sulcus. Um, on either side, you can see the transverse sinus which is related here, and along the line of attachment to the petrous temporal bone. On either side, you have the superior petrosal sinus, and on the superior surface along the line of attachment to the false cerebrae in the median plane, you have the straight sinus. And next picture. Here also you are able to see the Tentari Circle in detail. So I have said that at the point of intersection of the free margin and attached margin. So this is the point of intersection of the free margin and attached margin. You can see two cranial nerves here at this point, that is the oculomotor nerve and the trochlea nerve. Okay. Another picture. So you can clearly see the relation between the Tentorium cerebellae and the false cerebrae here. So this is the Tentorium cerebellae, which is actually forming the roof of the posterior cranial fossa. Okay, this is the Tentorium cerebellae. And this is the superior surface of the Tentorium cerebellae. Attached to the superior surface of the Tentorium cerebellae in the median plane, you are able to see the false cerebrae here. So this sickle-shaped fold of the dural fold, which is separating the two cerebral hemisphere, which is known as the false cerebrae. And you can see the anterior end of the sickle, which is being attached to the structure which is known as the crista galli. And superiorly, this is being attached to the superior. Sorry, it is superiorly, it is attached to the lips of the sagittal sulcus. Okay, and inferiorly, this is concave and it is free also. Now the two sinuses which are related to the false cerebrae along the superior border, we have the superior sagittal sinus. Along the inferior border, you have the inferior sagittal sinus, and along the line of attachment to the tentorium cerebellae, we have the straight sinus. And next picture. You can see the tentorium cerebellae here. This is the tentorium cerebellae. So first of all, we can see the anterior free margin, which is attached, the ends of the hue being attached to the anterior glenoid process here. And this is the attached part. It is attached posterolaterally on either side to the transverse sulcus on the occipital bone. And anterolaterally, it is attached to the superior part of the petrous temporal bone. And the sinuses which are related here is the along the attachment to the transverse sulcus. We have the transverse sinus here. Along the line of attachment to the petrous temporal bone, on either side you have the superior petrosal sinus, and on the superior surface along the line of attachment to the false cerebrae, we have the straight sinus. Okay. Next picture. So here you can see the diaphragmus cellate clearly. This green structure, that is the diaphragmus cellate. I can see anteriorly this is being attached to the tuberculum cellar, and posteriorly it is being attached to the basicellar, and laterally it is continuous with the dura mater of the middle cranial fossa, and you can see clearly see that it is forming the roof of the pituitary fossa. The next picture. So this is the anterior pre-margin of the Tentorium cerebellar. So this is the attached part. This is attached to the petrous temporal bone, posteriorly attached to the transverse sulcus on the occipital bone. It goes like this. And we can see the false cerebral, which is attached posteriorly to the superior surface of the Tentorium cerebellar in the median plane. Sinuses which are related, we can see the superior petrosal sinus, here transverse sinus, straight sinus. Sinus related to the false cerebral. Here we can have the superior sagittal sinus, and inferiorly you can see the inferior sagittal sinus, here straight sinus. Next picture. So you can see the sinuses which are related to the fold cerebri here. So this dural fold, you can see a sickle shaped dural fold here. So this is the fold cerebri, which is separating to two cerebral hemispheres, and the sinuses which are related to the fold cerebri, that is superior sagittal sinus, and this is the inferior sagittal sinus, and here you are able to see the straight sinus. Now in this picture itself, you are able to see another dural fold, that is the fold cerebellar, which is separating the two cerebellar hemispheres, and this is this small sickle shaped fold of a dura which is dividing the cerebellum, which is known as the folds cerebellae. Now, a dural sinus which is related to the fold cerebellae, that is the occipital sinus, is seen here. Okay, occipital sinus. So these are the important points regarding the dural folds, and another part of the video we will be discussing about the blood supply and the nerve supply of the dura, and in another video we will be discussing about the dural venous sinuses in detail. Hope you understood the video clearly. Do discuss the points in the comment section. You can discuss your doubts in the comment section also. Thank you for watching the video.